Hello and welcome to the Business of the Business podcast. I'm your co-host, JP John Paz from the Two Man Power Trip. Of course, joining me is the financial wrestling genius himself, the co-host extraordinaire, Mr. Lavie Margolin. Lavie, how you doing today, sir?
Hey, John, I'm doing well. For me, this is the spring of Amtrak. Last time that we spoke, I believe, I was planning to go to Buffalo and ended up doing that. Great time there. Saw, of course, Brian Solomon, Brandon Thurston, Jace Nakarado, whom I never met before. That was cool to see, and some other folks as well. So we had a discussion at U of B, and then went for sushi after, and it was
Whoa.
kind of fun because you have like five guys, and you can sort of all nerd out. So the first thing I said was like, okay, what's actually a sellout? And we were having that discussion first.
Nice, nice. I love that. With BTZ, our one of our favorite guests, Brandon. Was that the first time you ever met him in person?
So that's a great question. So that was the second time. He was actually in town in New York a couple of years ago for an AEW show in where is it, in Newark? Right, it's always the same show in
Yep.
Newark once a year. So he was in for that. So I met him for bagels in the city that time, and it was also the second time in person that I had met Brian Solomon. We had just met before when I helped organize a panel, or I guess I organized a panel at my own college, which sort of like one thing led into the next.
Nice. Brian does great work working on Gorilla Monsoon book, so we've got a lot going on now. Speaking of Gorilla Monsoon, he mentioned, obviously back in the day, that somebody was the greatest athlete he's ever seen in his life, and that, of course, was Hulk Hogan. What is going on with Hulk Hogan right now? What is going on with RAF, Real American Freestyle Wrestling? What in the world is going on?
Yeah, that caught many of us by surprise. I think it's sort of maybe sometimes like when you create expectations, like in the way that you market it and with who and so on. In some ways, like it feels like very flawed already. Um, I don't want to go so far as like Creative Control Network type of flawed, but on one hand, but on the other hand, and I think the odds are against it. I think that there's opportunity here. So first, of course, it like came out of nowhere, Hogan and Bischoff at the NWO type of thing, and then they're like, "There's going to be a third man, right?" Like, and people are like,
Yes.
"Oh, like what is this? It's got to be a pro wrestling promotion or maybe like a podcast, somebody famous." And then I'm not sure if I remember his name off the top of my
Izzy.
head. Is
Izzy,
he
yeah.
okay? And then, from my understanding, he's very accomplished. Combat sports, of course, wrestling trainer and so on. It was just like based on the expectations, people were like, "What?" And then like it was still like mysterious, and then suddenly all these like mainstream articles came out which explained what was going on. So here are some of the more interesting points that I caught up on. So Hogan's Real American Beer serves as the title sponsor. Chad Bronstein is the co-founder and president. Left Lane Capital, which has backed Gerard Beek's Kings League, Shaun White's Snow League, and League One Volleyball, among other things, has added this to its ventures. Cassius is another sponsor. Then there was a Forbes article, which was interesting that Alfred did the interview, and he's like very focused on like uh, African American representation in wrestling, and of course Hogan
Yep.
has been recorded. I mean, let's say it if fans are not like saying very inappropriate things, basically. And Alfred's so like, oh, like, and I'm not faulting him for it. He's he has his own perspective. He's calling people out. But did he ask anything in the interview?
Hmm.
No. Now, as we know, John, of course, his interviewer is like, that may have been the end of things for the interview. But like when you're sort of standing on like, you know, principle, and you're interviewing someone that's kind of like in the modern day and kind of known for that thing and kind of being canceled for that, like, and you don't ask anything, it's like it's a difficult position to be in. But I don't blame him because it's interesting, like he couldn't resist asking about AEW, because if you follow Alfred on X, he's always very negative about AEW. But that's all aside. So Alfred asked, like you mentioned, getting paid because on the business side, it's being funded by Left Lane Capital. So I'd like to know more about what's the business model for Real American Freestyle. Do you guys plan to secure a TV deal, or have you secured any type of broadcast rights? Eric, no TV deals as of yet. We haven't even produced our first show. We just made our announcements. We haven't done anything yet in terms of TV. And look, we know that right now the market for sports rights, TV rights, it's a very healthy market, and we're glad to be in it. But we've got our work to do. I think of at least a lot of this is Chad Bronstein. Our partner is driving a lot of this with Left Lane. So the third man of our show, John, is becoming Grok. So I just asked them, like, what do we know about Real American Freestyle Wrestling so far? So here's what we know, and some of it actually surprised me. Real American Freestyle Wrestling pay-per-view event titled Declaration is scheduled for July 4th, 2025 in Philly. So that surprised me because we keep hearing about Cleveland being the first show. So we'll see. Declaration is a flagship event, a new unscripted freestyle wrestling league founded by Hogan, Bischoff, and Izzy. The event aims to blend competitive wrestling, as we know. Okay, so we talked about Philly. Notable participants: Kenny Blades, Zahid Valencia, Ben Askren. I think that's the one that we'd most be familiar with. Now, there's been talk about Wyatt Hendrickson, who I think is actually active military. So I don't know, what his commitments are and if he'd want to be involved. It's like Gable Stevenson. I could totally see that. He doesn't have a lot of options right now. Well, no broadcasting deals. And John, I'm sure you've seen, like, Hogan was like, maybe we'll even sell it to like TKO, that sort of thing. So like being an not only a big fan, but an expert in Hulk Hogan, like, what did you make out of this? And did Hulk Hogan being involved make it like more appealing for you?
I don't know. Like, freestyle wrestling never really appealed to me, to be honest, which is crazy. Wrestling fan, not really interested in freestyle as much. Sometimes I am. It kind of depends on like the level of the guys. Like, I know Ben Askren, like a guy like that, he interests me, and but not really. I don't know, this really didn't pique my interest too much. I could see them looking as like, okay, Real American, branded with Hogan, get the name off the ground, and then sell it to TKO, which they did with Real American Beer. So it kind of makes sense. And TKO now has a boxing organization outside of WWE, outside of UFC. So they have a professional bull riding as well. So that might fit into their maybe into their resume there. I know they don't have slap fighting yet, but maybe they could buy slap fighting and then do freestyle wrestling, then do pro wrestling. So it could fit the portfolio for TKO, but I don't know. I don't know if this has as many legs. Like, I don't know if there's as many freestyle wrestling fans out there to really sell it where you can really make some money off this. But we'll see. I mean, I hope so. And I was a little disappointed in the third man because I thought it was going to be Dennis Rodman. I thought they were going to be doing some sort of NWO like tour or something going on. So I was a little bit let down by Izzy. No offense. I was a little bit let down.
No, that's actually a good point. I didn't even have the chance to think about like who the third man might be, but that would make a lot of sense. It's sort of like three people, kind of like in their later years, various prospects. I think Bischoff is working for Conrad, or had been working for Conrad, like in the insurance business, which is, everyone, which is fine. Everyone does what they need to do. But in terms of like being viable directly in entertainment, looking for options, I think, like, and I don't want to speculate what's in someone's heart, but actually I guess I will. I think for like Bischoff and Hogan, like, I would say we could talk about it as like public figures. Do they really think this is going to work? I don't know. Like, it's an opportunity, and as long as they're doing the best they can with it and getting out there, and they are putting their reputations on the line. So that's one thing. And I think it's like, it's had that sort of thing, but I'm wondering, and I haven't really looked into it, but on the amateur wrestling side, there's not as many, there really aren't options outside of India ways to like make money and stay in the sport. And this has been like forever. So
Yep.
for people that are involved in Olympic style wrestling, um, it's a good thing because it gives them options, and it seems like they're setting it up that you wouldn't violate your NCAA eligibility. So kind of cool in that way, because you could have like, let's say the NCAA heavyweight, champion of the previous year, goes against like a no name of a heavyweight who's going for the Olympics or something like that. So you can have fun matchups. I think like any combat sport, you build up the intrigue by like telling their story and like building up to it, and you have the right matchups and that sort of thing. So there's always like that option, but I don't know if I think you get a lot of attention, and they definitely would have gotten attention if it wasn't Hulk Hogan to such a degree. Basically, everyone covered it, including mainstream outlets. So there's that, but I don't think the audience is the pro wrestling audience. I think it's more like the amateur audience isn't so large, but maybe people that are curious and semi into mixed martial arts. So it's hard because there's not necessarily a defined audience. But shockingly, this wasn't the most outlandish idea of the last 2 weeks, and maybe we have two contenders. One I'll categorize in TNA when we get there next, but what is it? What's it called again, John? Slap fighting, or what? How's it branded?
Yeah, slap fighting. Yep.
So
Power
slap
slap.
fighting's a power slap. So Dana White's thing, which surprisingly hasn't been sold to TKO. Maybe they're a little bit cautious about it, but it's kind of tied in some ways. There's apparently going to be an offshoot of it, which is with pro wrestlers, but having nothing to do with TKO affiliate pro wrestlers. It's sort of those on the periphery, Casanova Valentine, who's known as a deathmatch wrestler, no ropes, barbed wire, wrestling in bars, that sort of thing. Holly J, of course, a former guest of your show, she got a lot of attention for Netflix, that sort of thing. So I don't know, it's kind of it caught me by surprise. You wouldn't. I mean, who knows what Dana White is thinking. So I think it puts the real American freestyle wrestling a step above, because there's certainly worse ideas out there.
When you're looking at it too, just to throw this out there, Hogan is definitely looking to invest his money in different things, because now he's got the Hulk Hogan Score Sports Bar right next to Mass Score Garden, New York City. So this could be just another investment for him, and then he'll move on. And so interesting with Hogan. He's really, he's getting all over the place now.
Oh, I hadn't seen anything about this Score Sports Bar. So
yeah, right next to MSG.
Okay, and it's typical sports bar. And will he be making appearances like he does in Florida?
They said yes.
Oh,
so
I got to get on that list. I want to meet the Hulkster at least once. I was strongly considering the Real American Beer appearances in Westchester and
those
upper
lines
New
were
York.
crazy. I heard though, hours long.
Yeah, wasn't there something where there was shocking headlines where he. I mean, he's in his 70s, right? So how long can he go? But people were disappointed, or there was a kid crying, or whatever it might be. But when he does the national with Ric Flair, right? How much is that? That's $300.
It was expensive, yeah. And they had the longest lines.
Yeah. So, but I wouldn't mind. The longest I ever waited, and I was in college, so I really had nothing else I needed to do, for The Rock at Virgin Megastore near NYU to sign his book was 7 hours. Nice. But I always had fun with it because the other people online were entertaining and often kind of weird. So just fun, just to observe for the period, as long as you don't need the bathroom, I guess.
Yes. Sometimes those lines could be absolutely insane. But let's go. Since you mentioned TNA, what is going on with them? What's up with TNA wrestling?
So I have extensive notes here, and then right at press time, something caught me by surprise. I don't know if you've just seen this yet.
I got the
Zone.
email. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Okay. Um, from the new vice president, right, of TNA.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
so we'll talk about that in a moment. But Zone.ify, which is a fast streaming service, presents Canada versus the USA Border Brawl Sunday, May 25th, Niagara Falls, Canada, featuring the stars of TNA live wrestling event 5 p.m. So let's go to the Variety article. So the right featuring the stars of TNA. So who's in the picture at the top of the article? Brutus Beefcake, the Mountie Jacques Rougeau, Barbie Blank, Kelly Kelly, and the UFC's Quinton Rampage Jackson. When I first saw that picture, I was like, "Is this going to be like a reality TV show?" So tariffs negotiations later this month. America and Canada will settle the differences with steel chairs, smack talk, and suplexes. The Border Brawl, co-produced with TNA Wrestling, has been set as a live wrestling event to stream exclusively free on Zone.ify. The lineup of wrestlers will include, well, we talked about those four. That's basically just who they announced. At Zone, we figured if trade negotiations are going to be a circus, we might as well sell tickets, said Doug Edwards, president. The Border Brawl is what happens when you give international policy a kick in the ass and let it settle things in the ring. It's absurd, over the top, and somehow still makes more sense than real world diplomacy. We can't wait for fans across North America to witness the madness live on May 25th. Zone is a free ad-supported streaming service, fast channels, movies, long form, short form content, and so on. Let me just see here so I can give a little bit more context to the streaming service because I wasn't familiar with it. Zone.ify streaming service operated by Zone.tv has received funding from the following sources: Block Communications. They secured $22.5 million in new capital, accelerating the growth, and Toronto Dominion Bank. As part of the same financing, Zone also refinanced debt with Zone. These investments have supported its expansion, and apparently this is a growing network. Interesting to note that I don't know how much TNA is doing behind the scenes for them, but interesting to see a service that wants to stream pro wrestling. So maybe it's a one-off, but always think about like different promotions that are looking for varied exposure, and helps certainly wrestling and startup distribution go hand in hand. But for TNA, opportunity to get like a rights fee or licensing fee, if nothing else. I don't think it's high profile enough to like hurt their brand or compete or anything like that. So might as well make the money, as they're certainly looking for different ways to maximize their revenue apparently.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see what that's all about. They got TNA guys on it, Beefcake, Rampage Jackson, Kelly Kelly. So kind of interested to see what the presentation is going to be, and what that's all about and who is associated with. So kind of an interesting venture there for TNA wrestling.
Yeah, I hope things go smoothly. Like as we've talked about on the show, I think a real missed opportunity was when Defy, like, what's going to mind was like, tried a live show with sort of like with their pants down. But I don't know if that's the best way to put it, but it was
Right,
kind of
right.
like a disaster. The audio was bad. I'm not sure if it started late or dropped out or whatever. I really wanted to give it a chance, and it seemed like a good thing, and then like you never heard anything about it again. And of course the what is it, Pluto, I think Pluto, or or the Roku, their the channel that they had, I think it's Pluto, for wrestling. Of course we had interviewed the principals for that ended up going away too, and now there's just the very much branded services, which includes AAA. So that'll be curious to see if like once the deal closes and TKO's 51%, if they still go the streaming route, because they really don't distribute their other content in terms of fast channels. At least there could be easily be it PBR Fast Channel, UFC, WWE. We haven't seen that from them yet. So it's interesting to see if they would carry that over, or it'll be more like when ROH had a Fast Channel, and then when Khan bought the company, eventually it went away.
What else is going on though, with TNA? 'Cause there seems like like a lot of changes, not changes, but maybe promotions again, and a lot of movements.
Yeah, so I think firstly a story that's undervalued in the wrestling business. I think this is a big deal. It's sort of an upgrade of 17 territories across Central and South America. Um, Anthem announced a global multi-platform media company announced today a new partnership between TNA Wrestling and Clara Sports, a premier sports broadcaster across Latin America. The non-exclusive distribution agreement delivers a robust lineup of TNA programming to millions of fans across 17 territories. The deal ensures that audiences in Argentina, Bolivia, Chile, Colombia, Costa Rica, Ecuador, and so on, gain access to to the content. But we get that. But so I asked Rock to compare Claro Sports's exposure and distribution as compared to Pluto TV Latin America, which I believe was the previous service that TNA was utilizing. So Clara Sports deal represents a significant upgrade over Pluto TV Latin America, offering broader platform coverage, potentially greater audience reach, a more prestigious partnership that aligns with TNA's global ambitions. While the Pluto deal provided valuable free access, its streaming-only model was less versatile than Claro's multi-platform approach, which better positions TNA to capture Latin America's diverse wrestling audience. Claro aligns TNA with major sports media players, enhancing brand credibility and tapping into Claro's established sports audience. Pluto TV, while innovative for 2022, the deal was more utilitarian, leveraging Pluto TV's growing presence but lacking the strategic weight of a multi-platform broadcaster. Claro deal reflects TNA's momentum with new leadership and global expansion efforts. Pluto TV was part of TNA's earlier strategy. Reach and accessibility. Claro positions TNA alongside premium sports content, potentially elevating its visibility and appeal. The inclusion of pay TV and fast channels. Pluto focused on free streaming, which was cost-effective. Content scope. Both deals likely included TNA Impact. Pluto TV's deal, content scope was less detailed. But it's the same territories. Let's see what happens there. But that's a plus. As TNA always promotes, and I joke that they're in 200 countries, even though there are only 195. But some people told me about different territories and some temporary countries, or what do they call that? Interim, till they figure out if they're countries and so on. So fair enough, but they're out there a lot. But a lot of the ways that they're out there is just through like Triller or the Zone type distribution. So to get deals of the significance is really good. John Alba, touched on the banning of the blades, so less blood or no blood in TNA going forward. Alba said that there are multiple sources that there'd be up to 5 platforms the company was talking with, including streaming options for greater distribution. To me, actually, I take that as something dim, meaning that if there was something really strong, you wouldn't be talking about talking to 5 companies and getting the word out about that. It would be more closer to choosing between 2 deals or whatever. Like, it just might be the word getting out at different times. Obviously, it's good to have a lot of suitors or people to speak with, but a volume game for distribution just like doesn't translate to something that's as significant for me, but we'll see. Now, when we talked about all of the transitions in staff, John, a lot of what we were talking about was like the loss of institutional knowledge. So Carlos Silva smartly promoted those who've been with the company forever, who may not have had a broad overview of all the different areas, but they have that institutional knowledge, and they're putting them in a bigger position. So Ross Foreman, of course, well known for the PR side, and then Eric, who I think is on the production side as well. So Carlos Silva has been a lot more active on X now that he's settled into the job. The show in Irvine, California, looks like it did relatively well, lower than some of those like big numbers, but in terms of what it was, we didn't get any specific numbers. TNA will also be involved in Triple Mania Regia. Apologies for the mispronunciations, but that's of course one of the Triple Manias that also will include some WWE talent now. Anthem has finally, I guess, as we saw it, they had to sort of shake out their executive team, but they finally updated the website. So, of course, Len Asper, Carlos Silva, Neural Merchant, who was at those shows in, what was it, Qatar, who was talking about the relationship. Michelle Hall, who's in HR, we haven't heard her be involved. Anthony Siccioni, who used to be overseeing TNA for a time. He's now running the Anthem Canada. And then there's a president of entertainment, Anthony Shuan, which I don't think it's related, and Carol McDaniel. Now, looking at the upcoming shows, Brampton, again, I'm not sure how far Brampton, Ontario is from Toronto proper, but that should be an interesting comparison. The Maple Leaf Pro, which we'll talk about a little bit later, is running, the old Maple Leaf Garden, which is, of course, just a very, not very small, but a couple thousand people, the Manatee Center, which Ring of Honor had run multiple times, and collaborating with New Japan had run it too. But in Brampton, the hundreds of reserve tickets have been sold out. Just GA is available. We don't know how many in GA, but like it's a lighter showing on the map, which means that it's below, of course, the dark blue. So I think tickets have been moving. Now, WrestleTix has been able to cover some of the other shows because they're more open maps. So against all odds, and Impact at the Mullet Arena in Tempe, July 6th, 820 tickets distributed. Current setup, just over 2,200. And then the following day, 655 tickets in Moonshine Township, PA, which is, I think, outside Pittsburgh or in that general market. On June 20th, 758 tickets distributed of just under 2,500 set up. And the following day, 810 tickets. Of course, Slammiversary, which we've been covering very closely for a long time. 73 days to go as of this recording, or as of WrestleTix capture of this. 2,765 tickets, moving 76 in the last 7 days. So that's actually a little bit more than normal. As they hopefully put attention on this, that will maybe continue to increase the trajectory. I think they would hope so. Bound for Glory, we don't know where it will be, but we do have a date, October 12th. And there was some speculation that it'll be in Lowell, the Tsongas Center. I think, we're always talking about like Right Fit or whatever. I think like, what is that, like a C type of building? Depending on how you define it. I think they should go like a little bit bigger and more ambitious for that. Not Belmont Park's anniversary ambitious, but maybe a little bit bigger. But, sometimes it's hard to align all of these things.
What about GCW, the world on GCW? What's going on with our buddies over at Game Changer?
Yes. So, what's interesting is sometimes they put out like full graphics and includes things they haven't even like promoted yet. So just going to go through the full schedule as far as we know it thus far, and then go show by show where we can. So they were just in LA, Ukrainian Culture Center, the following day at Hawthorne Theater, May 4th, May 17th in Joppa, Maryland, at what's typically known as the MCW Arena, May 18th in Rochester, June 7th and 8th, Showboat, the deathmatch type shows, June 20th in Little Rock, June 22nd in Kansas City, Backyard Wrestling, July 4th, their traditional show where Mystery, where it is, July 5th, Hartford at the Webster, July 11th in Dallas at Gillies. That's, of course, the all-in weekend. July 19th in Brooklyn, the baseball stadium, July 28th, 29th, and 30th in Tokyo, Shinjuku Face, Tokyo Square, and Kraken Hall, August 14th and 15th, Gathering of the Juggalos in Ohio. That one I'm really, really curious about, as we've been talking about that for a long time, especially having Violent J on and then Brett talking about it as well. I think that's like a really intriguing feud that they could have. Then they will finish up the summer, August 23rd and 24th in Atlantic City, September 13th in Indianapolis at White River State Park, September 28th, London Electric Ballroom, but that's the Bloodsport show, October 4th in Anchorage, Alaska at Arctic Rec Center. So with LA, I don't know if it was a sellout by Showtime. I think we would have seen that, but in terms of the reserve that they set up, 7 rows deep, and then on the stage, those were all sold out in advance, and GA was the only thing available. It seemed to go over well artistically as well. I saw a lot of chatter about that. Portland, in terms of the venue they were in, it lists on the website 550 main room, 100 in the lounge. Maybe with the ring and the screen, cut things off, but it looked like a really, really small venue. Next, the MCW Arena. That's been fairly slow. It looked like probably front row is gone by the time we hear this. Rochester, things are picking up. First 3 rows are sold out at this point, and then 4th row and beyond is available. Tournament of Survival. So this is the hottest ticket that I've seen for GCW in some time, relatively so. 7th through the 7th row, basically they're sold out, or maybe a little bit remaining the 7th as we record this, and the GA remaining. Then the second day, Cage of Survival, 3rd row and beyond has tickets remaining. But the first day, I think like the death match, of course, is what GCW is first known for, and very strong in still. The Dallas show still has 2nd row and beyond tickets remaining. Little Rock, it was getting, to be about 5-6 weeks out. And there hadn't been information, but now we're getting that. In Hartford, July 5th, the 1st row is sold out. And no word in terms of next steps with Maimonides Park yet. In Brooklyn, typically these type of shows at ballparks do well if it's sort of like building to it at the ballpark, meaning that the season's kicked off already and the Brooklyn Cyclones, and then I don't know if there's any signage at the moment. There's no tickets on sale that I'm aware of, but like that sort of thing where like you get, a few thousand people every baseball game, and then some of them are interested in wrestling, and then like, it's on people's mind like the whole summer. But nothing yet, but that will be something to watch. So that's GCW proper. Anything further about GCW? Otherwise, we can talk about the offshoot Bloodsport.
No, I was going to say, what about Bloodsport? Because it seems like Shayna Baszler might be all in.
Yes, so I think now is the opportunity. Obviously, logistics and financing being necessary, but like as we talked about on the show, it just seems like Bloodsport has something. I'm not sure, like as they expand, like how do they keep the name Bloodsport? It's like the movie, not trademarked or copyrighted, whatever we called anymore. And the logo sort of like is right. It's red, right? I mean, which isn't too
Yes.
surprising, but
Yeah,
like
no, but familiar. Yes. Yep.
yeah. So not to cause any trouble, but like I've always been curious about this, so that might like be something to consider before they go all out. But the heart and soul in terms of like um current performers has been Shayna Baszler. And of course, there was talk about like, you know, we're not going to have a belt because Josh Barnett, of course, because, you know, we don't have Phil under contract and whatever. But like, clearly, Shayna Baszler is very loyal to Josh Barnett. She made a lot of effort to be involved even when she didn't need to be. So like, if you're going to have a belt, I think like that would be a smart person to have it on because you can always trust her and so on. I don't know if they do like intergender matches or it's always like separated. So if she'd only be the women's champion or if she could be the champion of champions overall. But now's the opportunity that she's on the market, maybe like thinking about something like expanding to once a month or 18 times a year, something like that. Maybe even pitching Vice, which I think would be a great fit. I mean, some things aren't doing so well there, like we talked about, like the arena football revival is only getting 5 to 10,000 people on Friday nights, but uh, you know, there's you know opportunity there in terms of the wrestling side of things.
What about New Japan Pro Wrestling? I feel like the resurgence isn't as it as it was last year, but maybe with Gallows and Anderson being added last minute to the show, maybe they're going to drum up some business because I know the Young Bucks are on the show as well.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing with the Good Brothers. You know, they're like so tied in and that's something that people enjoy. Like it tends to be that with New Japan, like right before Showtime, like a lot of tickets move. Now, I don't know if they're taking tickets off the board or they're being distributed a certain way, or it's just people are like, okay, I'm ready to buy tickets now. But they increased 485 tickets since in the last 7 days. As we're recording this, the show is just a few days out, so sometimes you'll see that. So you'll probably see another large bump. So, 1,000 according to WrestleTix, 1,973 tickets moved. So you'll probably see them comfortably over 2,000. Maybe they'll even get to 2,500. It's that constant question of like what makes sense, you know, for them in the U.S. And as we've talked about, of course, like the West Coast, you know, is more viable. Obviously, much closer, still pretty far to Japan, but closer. So I don't know. Like it's always curious to me, like how does this make sense? So I asked Brock
Yes.
to give me the numbers for like the top shows that haven't been co-branded. So no AEW Forbidden Door, no Ring of Honor, that sort of thing for New Japan in the US. So just to get a sense of like where we've been. And according to them, and I'm curious like if did miss something, that Windy City Ride 2024 did 6,200 tickets in Chicago. The G1 special in San Francisco 2018. I remember going over to my parents' house just to see, which wasn't too far. It was like 3 miles down the road, but like I went over there specifically because I knew they had Access TV. And that was like back in the day, right? Like it's just so different with of course AEW now. That was 6,000 to 6,500. Strong Style Evolved in 2018, 4,500 to 5,000. Fighting Spirit Unleashed 2018, 4,000 to 4,500. Windy City Ride 2025. So as we talked about, 4,520. Windy City Ride 2022, 2,200. That was at the Odeum. Long Beach 2017, 2,000 to 2,500. San Jose 1,800 to 2,200, and so on. So I think like New Japan in the US, like their heyday and like the timing was perfect, like 2017 to 2018, pre AEW, pre All In, with the Young Bucks, and like you had that alternative, and like in my mind, and I might have been fantasizing or imagining it, like be Mark Cuban, who owned Access then. I think he has a small percent now, but that he would become basically the Tony Khan, who would invest and like make it a competitor to WWE.
Man, I love you using Grok and stuff. I love it. I also love you using Twitter, aka X, to do polls. What's going on with this IWTV poll that you did? I love this stuff.
Yeah, so definitely not claiming this is a representative sample or anything like that, but of course, our friends at PW Ponderings, we're the official business podcast of PW Ponderings, but several others had retweeted this on our behalf or shared it. 50 votes, because, like, to me, at least in my feed, like, I don't hear about IWTV like I used to, so I just wanted to, like, at least begin the conversation, get a little bit of a sense in terms of the market, like, where are people with this? So this is just what came back to me. What is your engagement with IWTV streaming wrestling service? 36%, so it's 50 votes. 36% subscribed for many years and are still doing so. 4% recently subscribed. 30% had subscribed and are no longer subscribed. And 30% never subscribed. So you can see here, like, based on the people that answered, and we're seeing the poll, it's like certainly way overrepresented in terms of like the general, even like niche wrestling population, who would have considered IWTV and so on. But according to this, not too many people have recently subscribed, but they have that legacy business where a lot of services do, where people like, they just keep subscribing because that's what they've always done. So not saying again that this is where they are as a company, but just wanted to start the conversation and just curious, about how they're doing. And I think, as we know, Beyond Wrestling is really like their key anchor right now with the Wrestling Open. I think there's twice a week, like a live show that they have two separate venues. And that like anchors their content, so like gives it a reason for people to come back consistently.
Independent live event business, better now or in 2019? Interesting query here.
Yeah, so like overall, before we get into Grok giving us some info, like the way I think about it is like for more wrestlers are employed full time, and making better livings now, certainly with AEW. So that's obviously a huge thing. But in 2019, you had that entrepreneurial spirit and like a lot of buzz and companies trying well all over to like to a lower degree. So that's my opinion. But comparing the success of independent pro wrestling live event business in the US from 19 to 25 is tricky, as success can be measured in multiple ways: revenue, attendance, number of events, wrestler earnings, or cultural impact, and direct data is scarce. Based on available information, here's a breakdown. 2019 pre-pandemic. Strong year for independent wrestling, riding wave of growing interest in alternatives. Promotions like Impact, Ring of Honor, MLW were active alongside small regional promotions. Indie scene benefited from a robust economy and passionate niche fan base. Attendance and events. Indie shows typically drew crowds from under 50 to over 1,000, with standout promotions such as GCW and others during WrestleMania weekend, capitalizing on wrestling's biggest week. Internet streaming platforms like IWTV help promotions reach wider audiences, boosting ticket sales for events. Wrestler opportunities. Vibrant training ground. Wrestlers could work multiple promotions, and top talent often earn decent pay, though smaller gigs paid as little as $5 to $20. Scouts from WWE, AEW. Challenges: limited TV exposure and high operating cost. Venue talent production kept most promotions local or regional. There were no national TV deals. 2025, indie wrestling scene has recovered from COVID. The launch of ID program supporting indies signals a strengthening ecosystem, with WWE offering training, mentorship, and exposure. Streaming platforms like IWTV host over 10,000 events from 393 promotions, indicating a robust digital presence. Attendance. Specific attendance is hard to pin down, but promotions like AIW and Paradigm report consistent events drawing hundreds of fans, with some drawing international audiences. Snow Brawl and Beatdown 5 suggest a steady calendar of regional shows. WrestleMap features over 1,500 promotions. ID program has created new pathways, but challenges indie promotions face high cost and limited mainstream exposure. Key differences and trends. So 2019 benefited from pre-pandemic economy with higher disposable income. In 2025, inflation, economic uncertainty. Expansion of streaming. Platforms like WrestleMap have made it easier for promotions to market events in 2025 compared to 2019. ID program is a game changer, potentially funding more talent and resources. AW's emergence in 2019 disrupted the indie landscape. Conclusion: the independent wrestling live event business in the U.S. was likely more successful in 19, primarily due to a strong economy, fewer operational constraints, and peak fan engagement. 2025 shows resilience with digital growth and WWE's indie investment. 2019 likely edges out with a strong fan enthusiasm, bustling event calendar, and fewer external disruptions. 2025, current scene benefits from digital tools, developmental support, and a recovering industry. What do you think, John? 2019 or 2025?
I don't know. By that, I kind of got to go by maybe 2019 in certain way, but probably barely 2019.
Yeah, it's just different. Like
Yeah.
2019 was like emerging promotions that stood alone and different brands and so on. Whereas 2025, like you don't have as many it's just different. But I think 2019 was just more exciting and more compelling to seek out those brands. Whereas now, like you're getting it in so many different ways, and AEW is just like sort of satisfying. I know I feel, but because people have been more negative on it, also they may be seeking out more alternatives now.
What's going on with House of Glory? Seems like they're running maybe more, or it just seems like they're running more. What's going on with them?
Just brief. Yeah, so just briefly wanted to note, because you don't see promotions doing this as much anymore outside of WrestleMania weekend and so on. But House of Glory, I think they're strategic in that I don't think that they ran WrestleMania weekend, especially in Vegas, but they are going to All In weekend in Texas, similar to GCW, but they've been in Chicago a couple times, Vegas at a different time, Lowell. They've worked with Mercedes Moné. Mike Santana is there, has been a champion there. Zila Fatu. They're booking Matt Riddle. So I think there's if there's super indies and buzzworthy promotions anymore, I think that they're it. I think there's been a little change in the temperature, in that they've always booked talent, but the way they did so, it didn't create a buzz. And now it seems like they have that formula a little bit more.
Now my favorite topic of all time, here and there.
So this was an interesting story to start with. Absolute Sports, the parent company of sports news website Sportskeeda. I never understood that name. I know it's a popular website. Sportskeeda? I'm not sure where I'm cutting it off, or if you're supposed to say it together fast or whatever. And a subsidiary of Nazareth Technologies is set to acquire 2 pro wrestling media properties, TJR Wrestling and ITR Wrestling. I'm not too familiar with either. I think they're more like, in my opinion, it seems more like clickbaity, but sometimes that works. In a $1.25 million cash deal, the move was part of Absolute's efforts to strengthen its position in the combat sports media segment, particularly in the U.S. The company said the acquisition would also enhance opportunities for fan engagement and digital advertising. These websites launched in 2019 and 2020, respectively, and have built dedicated communities focused on pro wrestling content. Combined, they draw 1.7 monthly active users and generate 4.6 million monthly page views, primarily from North America. The 2 sites reported 722,000 revenue in 2024. So that's actually interesting. At first, when I saw 1.25 million, I was like, oh, that's a lot of money. But if they're generating 722,000, that actually might be like, having been a Shark Tank watcher for many years, like, when you're figuring out multiples of revenue and what's it worth, that's actually not, they're getting a pretty good deal. This acquisition aligns perfectly with our vision to be the leading go-to destination for wrestling content worldwide. It also reinforces Absolute's dedication to expanding its footprint and so on. So on to the next thing. We talked about Maple Leaf Pro. I love it in Canada's Ticketmaster. They often show like the capacity for a venue, which is cool. 2,320 for the Manatee Event Center. Not sure like how many tickets they had opened up and whatever, but there just seems to be a cluster at the top of the venue and a little bit of seats here and there, but mostly everything else is gone. And they've had billboards around Toronto and so on. So that's something really to watch for, especially Scott D'Amore promoted event. So next, and I'm surprised GCW never capitalized on this, that in a throwback to Road Wild, BCW is going to Sturgis. Over 25 years after WCW hosted its final Road Wild event, pro wrestling will be a part of Sturgis Motorcycle Rally. Below Zero Wrestling is partnering with the world-famous Iron Horse Saloon to promote Road Rage on August 8th, 2025. So just like we saw the Mall of America become a regular venue in Minnesota and a throwback to WCW here, we see some more, I wouldn't say IP, but, a connection to the past in a unique event. Now, OVW is, starting to invest in staff. I saw one person on LinkedIn, I believe, tweeting about like their chief content officer, I think was the title, but they just promoted a new job for a full-time operations manager. Let's see here. So supporting developing the objectives set by the board of directors, supporting production and commercial team with logistical challenges, overseeing retail, merchandise, ticketing, and general day-to-day operations. And I'm actually going to be talking on a panel soon.
Again.
Again, about careers in pro wrestling and get some people from the business on that. So I'm going to keep this in mind because what I was going to say was WWE and AEW have the full-time jobs, but it's kind of few and far between outside of this. Now, in this application, I'm going to hold on to it, John, is Rob Edwards, the CEO of OVW Wrestling. He has his email on the description. So similarly to previous part owner and basically the face of OVW's ownership for a couple of years, Matt Jones, coming on the show twice, I think we should reach out to Rob at some point to talk about the next iteration of OVW. What else? Mid-Atlantic, I think Mid-Atlantic, MATW, Mid-Atlantic Territorial Wrestling, which I think they run like fairly frequently. They talk about once like their schedule, which was unique and interesting. But they're going to be on Right Now Television, which is a longtime supporter of the independent wrestling scene. I think maybe a few years ago, their content person was a worker, but good for them for getting out there more, like I've talked about before. Sometimes people disparage these type of opportunities, but as somebody that's helped distribute a little bit of wrestling, it's it's hard to get it out there. So so that's a good thing for them, of course. Now, interestingly, because always think about Dave Marquez, UWN Championship Wrestling, all that sort of thing, very like California West Coast based, but they are leveraging their relationship with Levity Live, which has a comedy club or event space in California. Now they're coming to New York. What's funny is that they often say, like, in some of the materials, they're like uniting the 5 boroughs, but this show is actually taking place in West Nyack, New York, which if you have a car and you're sort of where I am, it's a pleasant 40-minute drive upstate, kind of along the Palisades, just over the river from New Jersey. So I don't think they're uniting the 5 boroughs in any sense of the word, but an area that you could certainly draw from, who probably doesn't get a lot of live pro wrestling.
Nice. Good stuff, Lavie. A lot of different organizations out there, doing their thing this week that we covered. So good stuff. Let's wrap it up and head towards the plugs. You follow me on Twitter and Instagram at 2Man Power Trip. How about you, Lavie? What do you got going on?
Follow me on X at Lavie Marg, Lavie Marg. Check out one recent long form article on lioncubjobsearch.com about the AAA acquisition, a unique perspective, not about exactly the acquisition, but more opportunities in the US for maximizing the brand. Also on the website are a number of evergreen book reviews. I was just reviewing a couple of them that I wrote today, wrote in the past. And of course, the Wrestling Estate has my article on the 10K attendees to the collective. We are the official business podcast of PW Pondering, and we are distributed by the Creative Control Network.
All right. Thank you, Lavie. Thank you, everybody out there, for listening. See you right back here next time for a little business of the business. See you next week, folks.